Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your heart. Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your heart. Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your heart. Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your heart. Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your From the book of Leviticus. If you follow my statutes and keep my commandments and observe them faithfully, I will give you your rains in their season, and the land shall yield its produce, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. Your threshing shall overlap the vintage, and the vintage shall overlap the sowing. You shall eat your bread to the full and live securely in your land. And I will grant peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall make you afraid. I will remove dangerous animals from the land, and no sword shall go through your land. In the reading from Leviticus, we hear a connection between righteous living and right relationship with both the land and our neighbor. But it is too easy to read this text as a formula. If I do this, God will make this happen for me. I think anytime we think we have a formula for making God do anything, we have probably missed something in the equation. But the promise of God in this text is that right relationship with God and obeying God's commandments and ultimately God's will leads to prosperity, security, and peace. I think we get to a more faithful interpretation if we think about the ways our actions, especially concerning God's creation, brings division, war, or other tragedies to the world. How do our actions affect prosperity, security, and peace for others, for ourselves? What would it look like if we intentionally lived with the understanding that all is God's good gift to be tended to for the prosperity of all, rather than used for our own personal gain, wealth, power, and gratification without any responsibility toward our neighbor? When we misuse the gifts of God, usually someone suffers. And when we are the cause of another's suffering, they are usually moved to seek their own security. It all becomes a cycle of need and pain. God's law leads to righteous living and healthy relationships. And that is a formula for peace and prosperity for all. Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your heart. Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your heart. Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your heart. Teach us to love, to till and keep the garden from your hand, the dream of your heart. Teach us